that was the moment that I said, if by some miracle I survive and I get out of here, it's game on.
Hey guys and gals, this is Trevor with Carrot. And one thing that I really, really enjoy about the Carrot Cast, and it was kind of one of my main intentions when we started this podcast, about a year ago now, that you guys have heard on the Carrot Cast, my non-negotiables in life. We did an episode on that. You guys have heard on the Carrot Cast, how we build business with intention and a heart and real core values behind it. And the reason we do that, and the reason I preach that stuff so much, and the reason I have my guest on today, is because there's so much more to life than business. We hear it all the time, where it's people are working they're working themselves to death, which is kind of a funny metaphor to what we're going to be talking about today. But they're working themselves to death, trying to grow their business when they don't really have a life outside of business. And I think it's something that a lot of us forget, that there's a finite time here. There's a finite time that we have on this physical place that we call Earth. And a lot of the times it takes a moment, it takes something happening to us or someone that we love that's close to us to change things. So we start to see things with more urgency. So we start to see things through a different lens, and we start to make those things that are actually important again. And I want this podcast to be a moment for you in your life, that if you're not at a spot in your life where you want to be, if you're not at a spot in your life where you feel charged and you feel that there is a mission and purpose for you, and you feel that everything that you're doing on a weekly, daily basis is feeding toward making a better world, I want this to be that moment. I'm going to introduce my guest to you, and she has a great story. You can go find her book. We'll tell you where to find it. And she's not a conventional Carrot Cast guest, and I think that's a great thing. She's not a real estate investor. We're not going to talk about lead generation, although she's really great at it. We're going to be talking about what did she go through in her life, a near-death experience. You're going to tell it, but it wasn't a near-death experience. You died. And there's a lot of perspective. So I'm going to bring you on right now. But Cherie, welcome on the Carrot Cast. Glad to have you.
Oh, thank you, Trevor. And thank you, everybody listening and watching. It is an absolute honor to be here today. And I have to say, I did listen to that podcast of your non-negotiables. And that's when I was like, this is going to be a great episode chatting with you. So cool. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Sweet. I love it. So we've got about 30 minutes here, and I'm excited about kind of unpacking some stuff. So what I'd like to do right now is let's give people some perspective for who you are and kind of what is it, what was that defining moment in your life that has led to what you're doing today in this new perspective that you have? What is that defining moment?
That moment was literally the day I died.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no other way I can put it. And you're right. It wasn't a near-death tragedy. I literally died. I had sudden cardiac arrest. I was at the height of my career. I was for years, I was a lead tech programmer and, helped to build startup companies, digital tech startup companies, was massive in advertising firms, building, multi-million-dollar sites and so on. And I had left to become CEO of my own tech firm, which was my dream. Mm-hmm. And while it achieved really instant success, right at the height of it, I experienced sudden cardiac arrest and lost literally everything, Trevor, overnight.
So, one thing it's really interesting. So you're obviously a young and beautiful lady. Is there a history with heart issues? Kind of how did that happen, or is it a complete fluke that it came into being?
Yeah, no, I had about a year or so prior. I had a previous health condition that was taken care of. Mm-hmm. But I think due to treatment and some complications, it just somehow it ended up affecting my heart. And so what really ended up happening was very, very quickly, within maybe a matter of 3 weeks, my heart just went into heart failure. And it just was undiagnosed because I looked great.
Yeah.
And so it just, nobody caught it. And within 3 weeks, was the crash. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what happened.
So what was that? And I want to put people almost in the emotional state. And I'm very intentional with this because Tony Robbins says it. It's so true, though. A lot of people say it, that oftentimes in order to make change, we need to change our emotions around that. And there's so many people listening to this podcast that haven't done that yet with certain parts of their life. That's so important, so important that you need this moment to change your life. I have those. We all have those things we need to work on. How did that day start for you? I'm sure it started like any other day, but kind of walk me through that day, and then walk me through the next moment that you remember after the incident happened.
Well, interestingly enough, I don't remember the day I died.
Yeah.
So that's really weird in itself. But I hear stories of what happened, but I can tell you what happened the night before. And for about the week prior to literally, I flatlined in my husband's arms when I died. And the week prior, I started getting this I don't want to say it was like a physical voice, but I started getting this message in my head, like, you're dying. Like, nobody's catching it, but you're dying. So I had already begun this process mentally and emotionally of literally preparing that this was my end. I didn't know it would be a week, but I knew it was the end. And when you asked me what was going through my head, it was like, it's so hard to describe, but I remember being like, I was an A student my whole life. I went to a great college. I worked my butt off, for like corporations and different companies. And I worked so hard, but I always put myself last. You know what I mean? Yeah. I always put myself last. And I was literally like, I was like the queen of people pleasing. So, the day before I died, I actually had this moment where I just started bawling my eyes out, like wailing from it came from the depths of my soul, Trevor. It wasn't like just a regular, like, sadness. It was like a soul depth. You lived this life incorrectly to who you are type of cry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So emotional. And I had to make peace in that moment, and up to the moment that I went to sleep that night, that I had messed up.
Yeah.
I had lived my life incorrectly to what I deserve and what my birthright is as a human being on this planet, because I had spent so much time listening to others that were trying to keep me small.
Yep.
So it was regret. There's no other way I can say it. Like, when you hear about the top 10 regrets of the dying, I experienced that, Trevor. And that is something that is on the forefront of my mind every morning that I wake up now.
Yep.
Because it's such a blessing for me to even still be alive. They could not resuscitate me. So they tried CPR. They were ready to call my time of death, first of all, within 5 to 10 minutes, ready to call my time of death. And it was one doctor in that emergency room that said, I'm not losing her. And he literally instructed everybody else. It was such a nightmare in there that the emergency medical staff didn't even actually know how to save my life. That's how bad it was. And he just instructed everybody to continue CPR long enough for him to figure out what to do with me.
Gotcha.
So they did this CPR for over 90 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Right? That's just unheard of.
It is.
Right? It's completely unheard of. And it was during that time that he was able to install this temporary life support device. Many, many miracles happened. I was shipped off to another hospital, New York Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. that's associated with Columbia University. And they just happened to, I mean, literally, like, their tagline is like, amazing things are happening here. Like, I am walking miracle. So, so they were able to save my life. I ended up, I was in a coma for 3 months. On a bionic heart. So literally, I still had no heartbeat. Like,
wow.
My story is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But to really get to the heart of it, what it took to save my life was going from the ICU for 3 months in a coma on a bionic heart to then the FDA had just approved a portable version of that bionic heart. So I went home on a portable bionic heart device that literally had to plug into the wall, just like my cell phone. Yeah,
oh my
it was
gosh.
crazy. I mean, talk about a crazy life. And I lived like that for about 5 years. I was able to be mobile and leave the house because it had batteries. So similar to your phone, you could actually put batteries in it. And I lived like that for 5 years while I waited for a new heart, because I was basically in, at this point, end stage heart failure. And, and I eventually had a heart transplant 2 years ago. And, now you're seeing me basically, building my brand, blowing it up and doing a lot of great things with my life. But I learned so much during that time. I mean, we can talk about whatever you want from here.
Yeah, but I definitely want to unpack certain parts of that, because to me, there's match. So it was about 7 years ago, I take it, adding those numbers up, right? So there's some magic in there. And I know the message I want to get across to people, myself included, is I don't want an incident like Cherie had to go through to be that trigger point to change your life. And I want to walk through some of those shifts that you had to make. And I've read a lot of the content you've got out there and heard your story, and you're mentally down and out for a phase where you're going, man, how am I going to go and do X now? Because I've got this kind of cloud hanging over me now. How do I do that? So you mentioned before you had the incident, and I'm just going to refer to it as the incident from now on. But before you had the incident, you had already kind of mentally started to come to terms, I guess you could say, that you're not going to be around much longer. You didn't really know how long, and you had this regret. At what point after the incident happened did that regret, oh my gosh, you know what? It's not regret now. It's, I still have a chance to turn this around. When did that happen through the process?
I can tell you that happened while I was on life support. Yeah. So when I was attached to a ventilator, so I couldn't breathe on my own, when I literally lost the ability to I couldn't talk. Okay. I could not breathe. I could not move from the bed. I was trapped in the bed. I could not hold a pen. I could not hold a phone. I had to communicate by moving my lips until I was rehabilitated enough to gain some mobility in my hand. It was that moment that I laid there for 3 months in and out of the coma, staring at a wall. I mean, that was my life, staring at fluorescent walls above my bed in the ICU for three months.
Yeah.
That was the moment that I said, if by some miracle I survive and I get out of here, it's game on. Like, there is no way I will relive my life the way the majority of people are living their lives.
Gosh, that right there, I am not to the degree, of course, that you experienced, but this is probably 5-6 years ago. That and I've talked about a lot of stuff in that time frame. We all have to have that moment where you almost, pardon my French, you almost start saying, I don't give a shit what other people think about me or this situation. This is me. I've got to be me. Who am I, first of all? Because like you said earlier, that there's all of these influences, people outside, whatever, that oftentimes we start to use to shape our perception of who we are. And then all of a sudden we don't know who the heck we are. And
Exactly.
was it during that phase you started to really learn who you were and kind of come into your own? And who are you now? Like, who are you now, and how does that contrast to where you were before?
Yeah. I love this question. I love this conversation. Yeah, gosh, it's so powerful. Yeah, it was in that silence. It was in the silence and no longer having the external world flashing commercials in front of me, flashing people's opinions, just everything that shapes our. We don't even realize all the ways that we are just bombarded every day. Even sometimes our family and our loved ones, they want certain things for us, and maybe that's not who we are. I mean, and it's hard. You don't want to let people down, and especially family. So in that silence, in the ICU, they would say, they always say, like in the hospital, you want the TV on? I was like, no. And I remember at one point they're like, do you want to watch like the Kardashians? I was like, no, definitely not. Because it was about me. What I learned on life support was to save my life. All right. And this is a metaphor for whatever it is you're going through right now. Yep. Okay. Because everybody is going through some type of challenge, in one form or another. I learned that to get through my own issues, my own struggles, I needed every ounce of my soul's reserves, my energy, my focus, my health, the cellular, molecular makeup of my body. I needed everything.
Yeah.
And you can't have that when you're so focused on what everybody else is doing or what everybody else thinks of you.
Yep. Exactly.
So I learned in that moment how to actually apply that even now. Even now in business, even now in putting myself out there. Like I'm really, putting myself out there on a big scale in front of the world. That's scary for a lot of people. It is. Yep. I mean, that was terrifying for me. So I come back to that and I remind myself, because that time, that quiet time by myself without the distractions, allowed me to get to, the core of who I am, which is, what you're asking, who am I, and I got clear, and I realized at the heart of it, I'm a beautiful soul that wants very few things in life, very few things. I love inspiring people. I love sharing what makes me happy and seeing that lift somebody's mood or put a smile on somebody that's having a struggle. Like, I got so simplified in what makes me happy and who I am. And it wasn't about anything outside of me. It was about, what's my personality like? What's am I quiet? Like, I'm a very actually quiet person. I'm pretty much an introvert. I learned to be outspoken, to be on stages and stuff and on television. But I'm a very quiet person. And when I realized that what I just wanted to do was inspire people. Now, whether you're doing that with real estate, because you're putting somebody in a home and you get to see the big smile on their face when they close the deal, or you're an entrepreneur, building a digital tech firm, whatever it is, if it puts a smile in your heart and on your face and on the faces of others, own that. Own that space. And be proud of that, And I learned that it has nothing to do with whether you leave and form your own company or whether you're in a company. You can still take charge of who you are and use that to the best ability that you can to be the best employer, the best entrepreneur, the best mother, the best wife, the best husband. it's really about tapping into who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I believe the best way to do that is to get still.
Yep.
So for people with busy lives, you have to just make it a priority. Just like brushing your teeth, you have to make it a priority that you will get still,
mm-hmm.
because your life depends on it.
So I want to unpack that a little bit here, and I'm so glad you're saying this. A couple things popped in my mind that same thing. I went through similar things in that theme. A different incident made it occur, but the getting still part, right? That's so common in today's age where we've got these darn cell phones. We've got all these different things up here. You've got messages coming at you everywhere. And what people often do, and I am also guilty of this. I've got 3 kids, 2, 4, and 6. And when your own kid says, "Dad, please put the phone away," you shouldn't have been on it, right? And so how do you become still in a world that has stuff everywhere? First question. Second thing, and before, actually, let's answer that first, because then I have this passage from an interview that you recently had that I really love this passage and some things that you said. But how do you become still if you're not forced to be because you're sitting in a hospital bed?
It's a great question because it's a mindset thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, how did I survive life support? I mean, do you know how many patients have been either just as bad as me or not even as dire a condition that did not survive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it's not easy to fight for your life. Now, whether you're sitting in the ICU or whether fighting for your life, like you're sitting in your living room and you have a choice of watching the television for the next 2 hours or actually turning that off and fighting for your life by making a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We all have the ability to make a choice. We all have that right.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's whether you're going to make the choice to walk down this path of saying, my life is worth it, my family's life is worth it, or you're going to make the other choice and say, I'm not worth it.
Yeah. That's a really, really good lead into this passage. We're talking about really owning yourself and how that is one of the first most important steps that we've all got to take to be not just happy. We hope that starting businesses and doing whatever your business does, whether it's real estate or whatever else, you hope that that's going to make you happier. But I know a lot of people who have a ton of money who are completely miserable, and you hear it all the time. I mean, we've seen it just recently in the past month or two where celebrities, 2 big musicians, lots of money, that was taken care of, lots of outward success, inward, they weren't loving themselves. So I want to read this passage from an article in Forbes that was about you. So first and foremost, Aimee says, the foundation of a successful life is loving yourself. However, this isn't necessarily an easy feat. Our culture values certain aspects of self and condemns others. It's easy to love the aspects of yourself that get external approval, like being disciplined, courageous, passionate, and assertive. But loving aspects like your laziness, your tendency to blame and resent, your anger, your cowardice can be challenging. The sense of stability and fearlessness you gain from loving all of yourself is worth the fight. And Aimee says, make a commitment to fall in love with yourself the way you did before you allowed all the rules and limitations to limit your greatness. And you look at kids, I've got 3 kids once again. They don't care what's going on outside of them. They're kids because they have that soul. How have you regained more of that in your life after this happened? And are there any kind of daily things you do, mindset thing? What do you do to help regain that and keep it?
Yeah. Well, this is the part that I love. All right. Because I literally made a commitment that if I were to survive, I was going to live basically just like the passage you just read. Mm-hmm. And that can be a little scary for people, especially in business, right? Because we're kind of taught to be composed and humble and quiet and kind of just stay in our little spaces. Mm-hmm. Well, since I died and all, I was like, well, you know what? That I already have a crazy story. So let me at least go out and try to put it to the test.
Yep.
Because I to a certain extent, yeah, there's times where I worry about what other people think. But for the most part, if I ever fall down that trap, I'm always like, Cherie, you died. All right. So what I love is that I want to at least be the example, walk that path so I can show you it's okay. Not only is it okay, but I'm getting more success, more happiness, more vibrancy, and better relationships by doing this. So I literally, a couple things I do. When I am grateful for somebody or appreciative of them, I will tell them right there on the spot. And I will tell them literally every single day. If that's what's bursting out of my heart, I will say it because I don't know if they're going to be around tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right. So I will do that. And sometimes we apply that just to people that we know or we're comfortable with. I do that in business.
That's cool.
In business, like when I first meet people and, and sometimes if I feel like it's a little weird for them, I'll just warn them. I'll be like, this is just me. But honestly, I've never really had to do that. Everybody has been receptive of it. People love it. Why? Because people are craving it. They're craving the kindness. They're craving in this tech world. They're craving that intimacy, even if it's just through networking, right? So a couple of things that I do to really get myself in this kind of playful, high vibe state so I can even do the work that I do is, a lot of people have trouble meditating. So sometimes what I will do is I will listen to music that's like, I always forget what it's called, but it's kind of aligned. There's a certain residency. Yep. It's like a certain megahertz or something. Have you ever heard of that?
I totally do. And there's a channel on Spotify.
Is there?
I totally know what you're talking about. Some sort of a rhythm or whatever, but there's a channel on Spotify that just plays music like that. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that has been so crucial in building my brand, especially the past 2 years since everything happened. I definitely will make sure that I'm, feeding my body high vibe foods. So definitely smoothies are the easiest thing. You can whip them up really quick. I spend a lot of time in nature. So for me, that is my most powerful source of remembering who I am and tuning out all of this technology. Like I will start to feel weird if I have too much of all these devices around me. I got the lamp around me right now. Like afterwards, I'll probably go sit outside because I've learned that's what my body needs. So my suggestion is for people, when you're getting still, ask yourself, ask your body, what does it need? Because it may not be able to answer you right away, but I promise you, if you develop that as a practice every day, where you take 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even before you jump out of bed, get up 15 minutes earlier and just give yourself some quiet time. All right. Before you jump out of bed, that's the easiest way to do it. If your day is too crazy, the easiest way, get the quiet time in the morning. And just make it a habit. It may feel weird in the beginning, but just do it every single day. You will start to crave those moments and you will start to magically get a sense of what we're talking about here today.
It's so important, Amy, because I have a mentor, highly successful person, insanely successful person. And he said one of the most important things that he did, 7-8 years ago in his whole life is he scheduled in what he calls thinking time, but it's the same thing. It's his version of being still. And it's not 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. He schedules 3 hours a week of straight up going away for blocks of time. He does it in 90-minute chunks. It's like on a Monday and Friday or whatever it was. And he's like, no phone, no email, just me and a notepad, and I go do whatever. And he said, whatever pops up in my brain, I kind of think about, and sometimes I'm just out there just being still. And he said it's the biggest thing in his life and business, part of it because he clearly knows who he is, and a big part of it's because he takes those moments to think, not just absorb. The second part of it, if people are looking at like a business reason to do this, you're like, oh man, my schedule's already packed and I already don't have the time to do that. Whenever I do this, which I need to get more consistent with it, so that's something I need to work on. But whenever I do this, I always have mental breakthroughs that I never would have had if I'd have packed out with appointments. And he said too, he 10x his business over the years because of that thinking time, because now you put the extra mental capacity and get the clutter out of the way so you can actually think of these problems in a different way. I think it was Albert Einstein that said something about a quote of the thinking that got you into the problem isn't the same thinking that will get you out of it. So if we're in the busy mode and all this kind of stuff, and we think that continuing to be busy is going to get us out of that mindset, out of that despair, out of that business issue, it's not. Slowing down, being still is a big part of it. So people get that into their schedule. Be still. Start to own yourself. We've got a couple minutes here, and I'd love to do a follow-up podcast with you possibly, or do something, because there's a lot that you have to share. But
thanks.
You have a book. Where can people find out more about you? Because you've written a lot and had a lot of interviews on this topic that people can dive into more. Where can people find more about you?
Yeah. So my book, it's a compilation of different near-death experience stories. You can find that. It's called God's Fingerprints, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences. That's actually right now available Kindle and paperback on Amazon. The awesome thing to do would be to go to my website, sign up for my mailing list. I have my own book coming out soon that's completely going to be about what I experienced in the afterlife during those 90 minutes that I flatlined. And it's going to have all the amazing lessons that I learned as well. A lot of those we talked about, but also there's so many more. So you can go to my website for that. But I'm very, very active on Twitter, which is at XO Cherie Aimee. And by the way that I spell my name, so my website is CherieAimee.com, CherieAimee.com. And again, Twitter is XO Cherie Aimee. But yeah, if anybody has any questions or, even just the confidence to really go out there, I'd be more than happy to help your audience with whatever questions they have. So this was great. And I really hope some of you out there got some value in this, because it's a really important message that I'm so passionate about.
I love it. So I'm going to toss a question at you right now to kind of wrap this up. And I'm in, not unique to me, but unique to my life, my life storyline here in a period where my grandfather was really close to me. He passed away last week, and extremely close with him. Right. And I had the chance to talk with him on the phone Friday. And then I went down there and sat by his side for 2 hours, and he passed away the next day. And I know for me, and he was an amazing man. It really made me think about that mortality. It really made me think about, man, even though I'm much younger than he was, of course, when he passed, what is it that's inside of me that I need to get out now, so those people around me or the people that I influence or can reach can get that message to hope to change their life? You had a message locked inside of you before you died. You came back. Yes. If you were to sit in front of someone who wasn't living life full out, what is that one thing that you can now say to them that 7 years ago you didn't think you were ever going to be able to say to them?
That I wish I had the courage before I died to do exactly what I'm doing now.
That's cool. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Well, guys and gals, check out Cherie. Check all of her resources. I'm sure she's on other podcasts, and I really appreciate you hopping on here with us and talking about a topic that we don't really talk about much as entrepreneurs. And I love it. Guys and gals, go out there. Please put urgency to your life. Find whatever you need to inside of yourself to find that stillness, like Cherie mentioned, on a consistent basis. Get to learn to love yourself, even if you can't find reasons why you can right now. Connect with Cherie. She has great resources and things that can help you down that path. And please go out there and just crush life. I mean, we're here for a reason. It's not just to absorb and not just to take. I know for me, like you, I get so fired up about amplifying people, about amplifying leaders, about core value on our wall, being a beacon of positivity and possibility. That's why I exist. And please, guys and gals, join that effort with Cherie and I and being that beacon in a positive way. Cherie, thanks for being on the call. Appreciate the heck out of you. Have an amazing week.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.